A decade ago, a probe was sent into space, scheduled to pass by our ninth planet Pluto in just 9 years' time, and send to the Earth the only pictures necessary to give us a complete view of the solar system. 7 months later, the International Astronomy Union voted, with supporting evidence, that Pluto could no longer be considered a planet and was instead given the title of dwarf planet. The amount of disruption this caused was unforeseen. Over the years, though, the arguments died down, and science textbooks with 9 planets became outdated. Everyone all but forgot about the probe, meant to help us learn about that distant planet, until it came close to arriving, that is. July 14th, 2015, was the day the probe, called New Horizons, passed closest to Pluto, and sent to Earth some incredible images. This was also the day the internet blew up. The debate of Pluto's planethood was once again on everybody's minds, in their mouths, and on their fingertips. Even though the internet had been around back in 2006, it wasn't as prevalent in day-to-day life as it had become by 2015. By this time as well, all the children who had been told in the middle of their schooling that something they had been taught to believe was false had become a heavy presence online, able to voice their opinions in creative ways. One of the platforms this generation was able to communicate via was Tumblr. Tumblr, though ostensibly a blogging website, is defined on an individual scale, altered by the user's ability to post and follow content which is interesting, intriguing, and relevant to his or her own life. The number of distinct communities on this website is vast, but there are a few topics which span the boundaries of each side. One of these was Pluto, and the discourse surrounding it in the summer and fall of 2015. Rumors were spread, and divisions were made. Users created entire blogs dedicated to the reinstatement of Pluto, or to the defense of the decision made. In addition to these, random users throughout Tumblr created posts to contribute to the disagreement. First, let us examine those on the side of the debate that agreed with the international decision. Here we have one composed by the blog Not Actually NASA. It says, "Pluto is a dwarf planet, and that's okay. I love Pluto as much as anyone, and it's okay that she's a dwarf planet. Pluto has other cute friends out in her part of the woods. She just isn't in the same plane of orbit as the other planets. Look at that orbit, it's cray. We can accept Pluto as she is. We don't need to push her into a mold. Insisting that Pluto is a planet isn't accepting her as her true self. She is a small, wild, free little dwarf planet, and I love her." This presents great examples of 3 large parts of Aristotle's rhetoric: ethos, pathos, and logos. Aristotle sees rhetoric as a point of persuasion on any subject. He sees it as a way to persuade people into believing the truth, whatever that may be. For this, the truth would be that Pluto is a dwarf planet, and that it should be accepted as such. We are not looking into Aristotle's dialectic, because for Aristotle, dialectic is the counterpart to rhetoric, the actual obtaining of knowledge through one's own mind and their logical method to get to the truth. But since this is a scientific finding, we're only going to be looking at rhetoric and how this specific person is convincing her audience via ethos, pathos, and logos. The first of these, ethos, can be found in the way that the author says, "I love Pluto as much as anyone." This shows that she is like everyone else, that she's coming from a point of support rather than hatred, as a lot of other bloggers were doing at the time. In that way, she's separating herself from those other blogs. The author utilizes pathos by personifying Pluto. She makes it seem unique, gives it a personality, and in the Western culture, we value individualism, and it makes it seem disrespectful to fit Pluto in a box if we make it seem as if it were just another person. She plays up the fact that she loves Pluto by first stating this fact at the beginning using the name of the planet, and later by addressing the mass with a more personal love using a gendered pronoun which conjures identity. By supplying this simplified image of planetary orbits, the author creates an appeal to logos. She points out how drastic the plane difference of Pluto actually is, which backs up the claim she inserted directly above it. Instead of continuing with Aristotle's guideline of rhetoric and using syllogisms to get her point across, the blog owner uses creative imagery to help the audience understand. The art by which words are painted is a large part of Richard's theory of rhetoric. He defines rhetoric in simple terms as the study of misunderstanding and its remedies. He believes in the creativity of language. According to Richards, words are context dependent, which means that yes, words have a general meaning, but the way it exists in the current context properly determines the meaning intended by the writer. For instance, take the word Pluto here. Pluto could mean a multitude of things. It could be the planet, the god of the underworld, the god of riches, a dwarf planet, just a general feeling of coldness. Here, the author chooses to use it as a personification of a character from a fantasy story. She emphasizes the word dwarf, making it seem unique and lovable. She gives Pluto a gender, feminine. By portraying her this way, the author of this post gets to dig into the empathetic tendencies of her audience. Other examples of the context dependence of words in this post include the words woods, friends, cute. Another theory of Richard's that the author of this post employs is his interanimation of words. We'll take this sentence for example. We can accept Pluto as she is. We don't need to push her into a mold. Each of these words has a specific use within the sentence. We is a group or society thing. We have to be in this together. The words can accept is more than just a choice. When paired with a negative apodosis, it's as if she's making an obvious statement, assuming that everyone wants the same thing, and they just don't see how to arrive at that conclusion. Western culture, especially Tumblr, prides itself in its progressive ability to accept everyone, making this a jab at her audience's pride and character. The phrase Pluto as she is tied into the feminist movement that is also prevalent on Tumblr, the fight for the rights of women. And if we take Pluto to be a woman too, then the natural association is that we must fight for Pluto as well. Fight for her ability to be strong and independent. As for the word push, it's violent, implying discomfort and stress upon the object receiving the action. When used in tandem with the word mold, it shows restraint, a desire to keep everything the same and being willing to do whatever is necessary to get there, even if it hurts others. Something that we would like to avoid and keep Pluto from having to experience as well. Now let's switch to the analysis of the other side of the argument. This opinion seemed to have been expressed much more angrily on the internet. They had to be forceful when standing against the authority of NASA and the IAU. Here's an example. Pluto's a planet, damn it! Markiplier, 2015. For this post, we're going to start off with Burke's pentad to categorize it, since it is so few words. The pentad is a distinction of 5 different parts of a rhetorical piece. Those parts are act, what took place, scene, situation, agent, the person who performed the act, the agency, the means by which the agent performed the act, and the purpose, the reason the agent performed the act. Burke wished to use these things to make it easier for the audience to understand what the author or speaker is trying to get at in using rhetoric and where they are specifically placing their emphasis. For this post, a possible pentad could be the act is the quoting of Markiplier. The scene is Pluto's status as a dwarf planet being brought into question again in 2015. The agent is this specific blog. The agency is a quote post on Tumblr relaying something Markiplier said. And the purpose is to express that people with authority over this generation agree with his or her personal stance, giving it credibility. The emphasis in this case is on Markiplier. Usually, in posts like these, the source of the quote is emphasized. Sometimes there's a legitimate person or article being quoted, but other times, the creator of the posts describe a person or situation in this section, a way for the audience to relate. Markiplier himself is very influential on the internet. He is a YouTuber with a large following, and almost anyone who knows about the internet would recognize his name, if not one or two videos that he has made. The person who quoted this on Tumblr obviously placed a lot of emphasis in the words too, because it is a quote. For this, we'll use the deterministic screens that Burke proposed. The idea behind a deterministic screen is that it's a lens which discolors, disfigures whatever topic we are looking at via the words used. Each word creates a specific idea in our minds, and it therefore tints the rest of the argument toward that direction. So let's look at some examples. By putting the phrase "damn it" at the end of the quote, it creates an image of a stamping of the foot, and I'm done with this conversation and want everyone to understand this truth. The phrase implies that whoever is arguing, has been in the middle of that argument for quite some time, and that the speaker wishes to express to the other party that they will never be swayed. Pluto itself is going to automatically pull up the image of the argument at the time that was happening throughout all of the internet. And so, in very few words, Markiplier is able to express that this argument that everyone is so wrapped up in is pointless, because people of his opinion are not going to be swayed in the direction that NASA wants them to be swayed. Whether all these users on Tumblr meant to or not, and I'm assuming for the most part that would be negative, they were participating in the use of rhetoric. It doesn't matter which rhetorician's theory we use. Any way we skew it, we can tell that these people are using language to better their argument and to get their point across. So maybe next time a debate comes across your path, whether it be super serious like the presidential election or something as trivial as the definition of Pluto as a planet or a dwarf planet, think about the way that you're using your language and about how that might be able to convince someone of your side just because of the words you use.